By fans, for fans, the Hog Style. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Welcome back to the Hogsty, DC's unofficial leading source for all things Redskins and the NFL. Not a whole lot going on in the land of the Redskins this week, but fear not. We are only a week out from the Super Bowl. We got a preview for that coming up, plus some other bits and pieces, position group analyses, and so much more. My name's Sean Conti, and I'm joined tonight, as usual, by my friends Steve Thomas, Alex Zeese, and Jamal Forrest. How you guys doing tonight?
You know, it's a tough day. Got to be honest.
It's a somber day.
Yeah, I mean, we put this show off for scheduling reasons, from recording Sunday to recording Monday, and for unrelated reasons. And quite frankly, I was kind of glad we did, in light of the tragedy that happened in California to Kobe Bryant and those other 7 people. I don't want to be too depressing about it. You know, I did write a column on our website about it, recognizing it has nothing to do with football, but it was just something I kind of had to get off my chest.
Well, everyone who's listened to our show knows you're a huge Lakers fan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm as big a Laker fan as I am a Redskins fan, and I've been a fan since Magic Johnson's rookie year, really, when I lived in Southern California. And it just a tragedy like this is just so unexpected. And it takes the life of somebody who meant so much to all of basketball, and particularly the Lakers, and particularly the city of Los Angeles, that it was really shocking and stunning, and it really took me a while to really believe it was true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got a text message from somebody about it, a family member, who just said, "Is Kobe actually dead?" And I was in a grocery store, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I said, I just figured he saw some stupid internet meme that, you know, LeBron James burned him on the scoring list. I really thought, you know, and it really, I stood there in the grocery store leaning over a cart for probably 10 minutes, staring at my phone going, this can't be real. This has got to be somebody's sick joke. It's got to be a mistake. This guy cannot be dead. And I really felt kind of bad, kind of odd about it, because I don't know why I would have such a reaction over somebody I didn't know. This is just a dude I watch on TV. I saw him in live, play a couple times, a couple games. You know, I don't know why me or anybody should feel such incredible sadness about it, but it's really because, I mean, you know, these guys and these players and these entertainment, you know, stars who died, they're really a kind of a part of us. And, you know, in my case, I've been watching this guy for 20 years, you know, rooting him on, admiring the way he approached life and approached the game. And it was a bigger blow for me than when Sean Taylor died. Really, because I mean, it's just been so. It's been 20 years, more than that. I remember when he was a high school student in Philadelphia in the mid '90s. You know, and so it was a really sad day. And I mean, I'll get over it, obviously, but I feel most bad about the daughter he lost. You know, and the father and the husband that his family lost.
Yeah.
So
well, and I would say too about Kobe Bryant. You know, in addition to being a legend on the court, he was someone that actually penetrated pop culture. People who didn't watch basketball were very aware of who he was. You know, you shoot a can into the trash can on the other side of the room. You know, you say Kobe. It was something that kind of we all were, you know, aware of it, and it was a bigger part of our lives than necessarily just being an athlete. So I think that speaks to what you were saying. That's it. I feel this loss as someone who didn't watch him for 20-some years, you know, as ravenously as some of his fans, and I feel this loss. So yeah, it's huge.
I don't want to be too depressing about it. You know, we're a Redskins show and we're talking football, but you know, it truly did affect me yesterday, and it's still today. I'm just still kind of shook up over it, and it's just kind of hard to believe. And you know, I did see that the NBA postponed Tuesday night's Lakers-Clippers game, which is probably the right thing to do. It was supposed to be a Lakers home game, and they don't play again until Friday. So that kind of gives them a whole week or most of a week to sort of process things, because I just don't know. You know, it really, if you think about the history of basketball, the NBA has not been around long enough to have a bunch of deaths of major people.
Not
Wilt Chamberlain, not early.
Yeah, not early.
Like Wilt Chamberlain died at his like mid-50s, something like that. You know, and there's been one or two others, but nobody on the level of Kobe Bryant lost their life so young and in such tragic circumstances. I mean, a helicopter crash. I mean, who would have dreamed that?
Yeah.
You know, and his daughter was with him, and it's something that I think the NBA really hasn't experienced before, and so I don't know if they really know how to handle it.
Well, you got to see the tributes from the players and some of the people giving interviews were very nice throughout the last couple of days. I'm sure we've all seen the videos of people taking 24-second shot clock violations and that stuff. But you're right, in terms of like an organized effort for a tribute, I think this is new territory for them.
Because the NFL's been through it. I mean, they lost Reggie White, we lost Sean Taylor. And who was somebody died a few years ago.
Oh, I mean, every year it seems like one or two players in the NFL die.
The kid with the Kansas City Chiefs that committed suicide. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember his name. But then you have the guys like
Junior Seau as well.
Yeah. You have a lot of guys like that who have died young from suicide.
But the NBA just hasn't had that.
No.
You know, the Major League Baseball experienced that with Jose Fernandez dying, in a boat accident a couple years ago, the Miami Marlins pitcher.
Right.
But it's just sort of new. But even he wasn't at Kobe Bryant's level, at all. He was a young player. So it's just very surreal for me.
The timing for a Kobe is rare because he just retired, what was it, 3 years ago? Not even.
2016.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, so... I mean, like, recent retirement, so you already know he's a Hall of Fame career. I mean, a lot of these guys, like we talked about with Sean Taylor, you look at it and you say you see potential, but it never quite got realized because of the young death. With Kobe, you saw how great, like, he was done, and then to just go right after that's tough.
What he's doing. I mean, my favorite Kobe memory that I saw live, I'll tell one story and then we got to move on,
right.
I realize. But I saw a Rockets-Lakers game a few years ago. And this was a close game back in Houston, a close game back and forth the whole time. Shane Battier hit a go-ahead, I can't remember if it was a 2 or 3, hit a go-ahead shot late in the game with 20 seconds left or something. And I think everybody in the whole arena knew it was going to happen, which was Kobe took the inbound pass, drove all the way down the court, didn't pass, didn't look at anybody, just cold-blooded assassin, put a 3 up, put the Lakers up, for the permanent lead, and that was such a classic Kobe moment.
I mean, how many times did he close out games? It was a routine thing. Yeah,
insane amount of times.
Yeah, well, moment of silence for him, and obviously major thoughts with his family and the family of the other people on that helicopter. So
and you could read my column about it. My rambling written therapy session, which I wrote in 15 minutes in a stream of consciousness.
I mean, we've all been there.
It was nice.
It is weird when it's a celebrity you don't know and you still feel something. That's a weird feeling, but we've all been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on from that, talk a little Redskins stuff. So we obviously have to get to the Super Bowl preview later, but let's save that for the end and stick with the Redskins for now. So what's this I hear about sports betting going on at some potential new stadium? Steve, surely you've got the lowdown since you're eagerly waiting for some gambling opportunities.
Yeah, that's really me. Jamal's the one we need to fill us in about gambling.
We're going to need to get a restraining order and keep Jamal away from Redskins Stadium.
Well, I don't know if we as journalists, I don't know how much we can bet and still maintain our objectivity.
It's interesting. I mean, you say that. I remember Rick Snyder telling us, or maybe he said it just on his show at one point. I can't remember now. But he said that back in the day, if you were a journalist and you were caught betting on games, you'd be fired, just no questions asked.
Of course, we're loosely calling ourselves journalists here.
Yes, of course. But I find it interesting that used to be an industry standard.
So what's happened, though, is this. Everybody knows that Dan Snyder's had major problems trying to find land for the new stadium. The RFK site looks like it's not going to happen. The National Harbor area down there
that's dead in the water.
Off the Beltway down south, that's dead in the water for a variety of reasons. Virginia doesn't seem to be too excited about it. The people aren't the fans aren't too excited about Virginia. So what Dan marched his tiny little butt over to the Maryland legislature and sat down and met with a committee to beg for a gambling permit to have gambling at FedEx Field or a follow-on
another
at
stadium,
FedEx Field.
Right.
Yeah. And the basic idea here is, hey guys, if you will give me a permit, I'll pay for the construction myself without the use of public funds because I'll have such an enormous amount of income. I can pay the debt service without carving significant amount into my Redskins income. That's kind of the idea.
Right.
Weirdly enough, and we went into this in detail on IJB this week. If you want to listen to that show will be out Thursday. But weirdly enough, the legislature didn't seem to be all that impressed.
No.
I don't know why they would not want it,
Well, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. One, they'll hate him. I mean, like, if you read any of the articles, almost any legislator who spoke on a condition of anonymity, they were all like, this guy's a clown. So, and everyone in Maryland's a Ravens fan at this point, so we don't really care what the Redskins do. That was the reaction.
Yeah. Well, so all of Maryland's closest, all the states that Maryland borders, allow this, right? Isn't Maryland notoriously very, tight about gambling?
Well, not really.
Isn't that right?
Maryland has a casino. That
it has two.
Gambling.
I know it's legal, but I mean in comparison to like Virginia, as I understood, and even D.C. right now allows gambling at the other D.C. sports
they're
stadiums,
going to
right?
this year.
Well, shoot, Delaware.
They're going to this year.
Delaware is on
Right.
the other side. Well, up north, and they've been ahead of the game for. I don't even know how long that casino's been open, but they've been gambling.
Yeah,
for
West
Remember,
Virginia,
though, that
definitely
federal law
New Jersey.
just changed a year ago, about a little over a year ago, and there were a number of states and locales that were grandfathered in, but basically gambling was essentially prohibited unless you already had gambling laws on the books. And the Supreme Court tossed that law out because the Supreme Court held that you can't treat states differently. If you allow it in Nevada, you have to allow it in Utah,
which makes sense.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense on a fundamental basis. So, but I get, Alex, what you're saying about, they hate Dan Snyder. Everybody hates Dan, right? I wouldn't give him a Coke if he walked in my living room. But isn't that just income for the state of Maryland? Why on earth wouldn't they just hand him a permit? Because the proceeds are taxed. He's got to pay for the permit.
Right.
No matter how much they hate him, why wouldn't they just give it to him?
Well, and that's a fair question. And the truth is, it cost them nothing to give him a permit in the end.
Exactly.
What was that?
Now, that was odd.
Yeah, that was Dan.
We have a gremlin.
That was Dan Snyder.
No, that was my phone is not on
vibrate.
Somebody called me. That's what that was. Yeah, I put it on vibrate.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of a business sense, this seems like a totally rational plan for him. Yeah, don't use any of my income to do this. This will bring me a little more money to pay for the stadium. Maryland should understand that everyone else is doing this around them. Their closest neighbors in terms of professional sports allow this. Seems like a no-brainer. I'm honestly totally on Snyder's side.
Well, some
on this
other
one.
things to kind of point out that I observed in the story. One, Dan Snyder seems to have his heart set on building a dome stadium. If he... and that was a little tidbit.
Another about $500 million.
At least I'd figure. Yeah. And that's just for a flat dome, not a retractable roof. Which I assume when people say dome, they mean retractable, right?
Yeah, in today's day and age, yes.
No one just builds.
Have you guys seen FedEx
dome.
Field? He's not going to put a retractable roof up there. He's going to blow up a canvas roof and call it done. You know what I mean? Look at that. Look at FedEx Field. It's designed totally for efficiency. You think he's going to throw any extra bells and whistles on this thing?
He designed FedEx Field, remember? And remember this much.
Well,
Jack Kent Cooke
he had enough to do with it.
Right.
But if there's one thing we know about Dan Snyder, it's that he likes nice things.
He likes publicly visible nice things. Yes.
Yeah, this is the man who's got a $200 million yacht that
Right.
has an IMAX theater in it.
Right.
I mean, this is not a dude who shops at Target. So
yeah, but he lets his stadium have one of the worst fan experience ratings in the NFL.
there's nothing he can
Seems
do.
kind of
There's
weird
nothing he
for
can
a
do
guy
about
that's.
it, though. I mean, he's stuck with the stadium.
Yeah, I mean,
for now.
thinking back on it, there was a time many, many years ago when Dan bought the team where he was trying to figure out a way to put a dome on FedEx Field. I remember reading something about that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it would have been like 2002, Steve Spurrier
That's
era.
a heck of an engineering feat.
Well, they couldn't do it. That's why it didn't happen. But I remember reading a little story about that years ago. But so yeah, he wants a dome. He's promising that if they do this and he can keep the land, because Steve, you've talked about this before. The land, it's technically still a lease that he has on the land.
Well, okay, so here's the deal. I did research.
At least it expires in what, like 2027 or something?
Yeah,
like
the lease. Okay, so the team's lease with the entity that owns the stadium expires in 2027,
Right.
and the reason for that, in part, is that the construction loan. Almost all construction loans are 30 years. Once you get through temporary financing,
It's like a
and blah blah
mortgage.
blah. It's basically loaned out 30 years. Now, I did try to research title a couple years ago on this property, and unfortunately, the state of Maryland, I could not get the online records in the state of Maryland, so I would have had to physically go there. And so I wasn't able to pull the deeds to the property. Rick Snyder has told me that the deed has a reversionary clause in it in which the land reverts back to the Prince George's County after the lease is. I can't verify that because I could not get the lease without sending like Alex or Jamal down to the records to go get it for me.
Would that be the PG Records office or the Annapolis Records office?
Prince George's County.
Okay.
Yeah. So if Rick is right, that would require more negotiation. And I don't have no reason to doubt Rick. You don't misunderstand me. But if he's right, that would require more negotiations with Prince George's County to it. But the real reason is that there's a construction loan. So he's paying debt service on a construction loan. So he can't just throw that in the trash can. He's got to pay that, so he needs the income.
Right.
So you can't just build another stadium somewhere else, pay for that, and also have another $50 million a year debt service to pay on top of that.
Yeah, so he would need to get that figured out, that agreement. He would need to build a stadium, which I'm assuming he would do the classic. I'm building the stadium in the parking lot. Will we play at the old stadium and then blow it up? That's what every team
that
does.
Or just go to the University of Maryland.
Yeah. I guess you could do that too. Play at Maryland for a few years or something.
College Park or somewhere.
He wants to move the facility, the practice facility, to the same property, which is interesting because now you're talking about a space issue, I feel like. And he wants to build a casino.
Well, it's not so much that he wants to do that. It's that the state of Maryland might require it.
Right.
Just as a, quid pro quo. Here's what I don't understand. And I say this because, Jamal, I know you live in Maryland. Alex, I think you lived in Maryland at one point.
I've lived in all three.
Okay. I lived in Prince George's County, maybe 3 or 4 miles from the stadium. So I was a resident of this area. So I say this out of love, but that's a crappy area. Okay? I mean, the old Landover Mall, which I didn't even realize had been blown up several years ago.
Yes.
That was a crime-ridden, awful place. You didn't want to go there for fear of getting carjacked, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if just because Dan wants to build a hoity-toity casino or whatever he wants to build there doesn't mean anybody wants to come to Landover. You're talking about a major, major gentrification operation to really revitalize that area. And Dan isn't a real estate developer.
No.
He's a telemarketer at heart. So it seems like it's pretty ambitious to me.
It
to have
is
anything
ambitious.
other than like a basic gambling operation.
I think it is ambitious, but living not in that area, but closer to that part of Maryland than, I don't live in Northwest. That is the next area. Like, when you look at how development's gone throughout the D.C. region, that's the next area. Like, it's been going from west to east, and it's going to start hitting where I am, and it's going to keep on moving east. So if he does it, he is in a prime location to build the next, what is the National Harbor, something like that.
I mean,
Well, yeah, so Landover,
like, there's a lot of new townhomes
I
going
would
in right
say
now.
2018, around 2018 is when they started like developing in the area, like the outskirts of FedEx Field, but specifically Landover, and they have Largo that's upcoming as well. And Largo and Landover are the two prime areas that surrounds FedEx Field, and Largo has a hospital coming in, and they have new townhomes and stuff going on, and then Landover has the townhomes coming in as well, bringing in. It's more so I would believe it's just traffic for like that the hospital that they're building and the redevelopment of the boulevard. So if he was to do FedEx Field location, truth be told, I wouldn't even have a problem with it. I do think the biggest thing with me, I think that the complaints are overrated. It took me a while to get to that point, but I do think the complaints are overrated in the sense that we're talking about trying to figure out where to put the stadium in a metro area. Like, this is a metropolitan area, sorry, but either way you slice it, if you're in a metropolitan area, it's gonna be messy in a sense on game day. And you just got to deal with that. So the traffic, people say the traffic and stuff is bad on Sundays. Well, yeah, it's true. And it's annoying on my end. I think it's very annoying.
Oh, I've been caught in that traffic, like just as I'm driving to Home Depot.
Well, I mean, I was on the.
So like if you're winning though, and you're going there for the experience and the actual team, like you're enjoying the day then those people who and somebody had said this earlier, and this is what actually changed my tune. I don't know if it was today or the day before, or maybe Friday. I don't know, but it's like if you're going there to enjoy the day, knowing that this game is going to take up your Sunday, it's really no problem. I don't know what they're complaining about.
Number one, Jamal, it sounds like what you're saying is Landover's changed drastically from when I was there, for the better. So that's
it's changed. Yeah. It's changed drastically.
So that's
it's not
good.
great, but it is better.
It's still, I'm about to say, it's still undergoing changes, but for the most part, it's not the same.
But I mean, in terms of the traffic and all of that, I was involved in the kind of the outskirts of the FedEx field development for a certain reason, and the local neighborhoods didn't want it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I was involved in it. I don't want to get into why, but nobody ever wants a stadium in their backyard.
Yeah, in the history of how many NFL and arenas, like the
zero of them have the local residents of one,
except for maybe the Yankee Stadium.
It's like when airplanes find a new route to fly over a new community, they don't like that.
Well, I do. I like hearing the airplanes, but I'm a weirdo like that.
I'm about to say, what the majority thinks.
Yeah, probably 99% of the public who are the non-pilot public don't want it.
As somebody who has Air Force One fly over their house every time, yeah.
See, that's the sound of freedom to me, man. But regardless, I mean, Dan's not going to find a spot where people are just jumping for joy that there's going to be a stadium there. I just find it odd that Maryland treated him so coldly, even understanding that they don't like him. I just don't get it. Why they wouldn't just go, hey, money, done.
Right.
Or at least give us this, go buy us some Coke and strippers or something, and we'll give you your license, something.
I mean, that's how you used to get.
Maryland's a weird state. Maryland's a weird state, and it has been kind of all through its history. If you think about it, weird laws. I have a feeling they'll soften on this though, and award it to him, or I would hope so. Okay, let's move on a little bit. We've got to save some time for our last bit of news and also the Super Bowl preview, but we figured we could spend 10, 15, 20 minutes or so talking about some of these position groups a little more specifically and what's going to happen in the future, or maybe what we think should happen in the future. So maybe let's just take a quick spoken word vote. Maybe what position group do you guys think needs the most TLC right now? Is it offensive line? Is it secondary? What do you guys think is the position group we need the most help with right now?
To me, it's a tie between linebacker and offensive line.
Yep, I feel that. Alex?
It's a tough one. I'm actually going to say on defense. I agree with you. It's linebacker on defense. But I'm still staying wide receiver on offense.
Wide receiver. Okay. Jamal, you got another thought on
maybe I
those?
should say pass catcher because tight ends.
Truth be, I'm about to say that's probably the best bet. Pass catcher or playmaker. I mean, either way works. But I guess for me, I would say linebacker. This transition to the 4-3 is going to be big, and given the fact that there's no certainty on Reuben Foster, and there may be some converted linebackers to be now pass rushers. Or defensive ends, that position is going to be. I think we're pretty skinny at that position.
Yeah, no kidding. Let's start there then, because I think we all pretty much agree with that. Let's go linebackers to start. So, in terms of addressing this obvious issue, and there were a ton of issues, what are you guys thinking? Free agency, draft, what's the best way to go about filling out this hole?
The principal problem really is that Reuben Foster's status is so up in the air.
Right.
I mean, that's a problem because I think they were, counting. They were counting on Reuben this year. They were, probably counting on him next year. So that's a serious problem. I mean, the problem is the problem I always have with free agency is that there's such a limited subset of people who are young enough and good enough to make a difference at a price that's affordable.
Right.
I mean, and if you look at the list of linebackers, there's some young linebackers out there, for sure. And there's some guys that have played, a lot. I mean, I'm just looking at some names inside linebackers. For example, Danny Trevathan, with the Bears.
Yeah. But he's 30 already. I mean,
he's 30, right? Kyle Van Noy, with the Patriots. I don't know if I'd ever want Patriots cast-offs, but he's out there. Wesley Woodyard is another one, 34 years old. There's some young guys, Deron Lee with Kansas City, as if he's going to leave Kansas Super Bowl team for Washington. There's some guys out there, but, Reggie Ragland is a guy, he's an Alabama boy. The Redskins like Alabama, the former regime liked Alabama players. So he's another one, only 26 years old. John Bostic is another one. Remember, Robert Henson, mentioned John Bostic. So there's a few guys out there, but they really need both. I think they need a free agent and they need to draft a linebacker, inside linebacker, middle linebacker.
My personal, if I were an NFL GM, my personal philosophy is when you have a need like they have at linebacker, you fill it in free agency, not maybe with a bunch of superstars, but you got to at least get guys that you get me 3 guys who I think are going to be at least backups or good quality backups. And then you use the draft to find rookies with upside and hope the rookies can beat them out in a year like this. Because I just don't think we don't have the draft capital to get 3 starters in the draft. You never do at one position like that. But
you know how they could.
Right.
They could trade number 2.
If they could trade it for all 3 of Miami's first rounders, maybe.
Well, so let me ask you guys about linebackers then. Is it a mistake at all to prioritize this first with the thought in mind that switching to the 4-3 is going to get a little more production probably out of the guys on the outside? That's going to help. They're going to get after the quarterback a little bit better in the 4-3, or at least maybe in theory. So should we instead maybe prioritize secondary, knowing we're going to be getting after the quarterback, he's going to be rushed more? Maybe we should focus on something else instead of inside linebackers. Trust me, I understand it's a huge need.
To me, right now today, the Redskins have, maybe one legitimate starter?
Yeah, one's legitimate and maybe 2 guys who could rotate as a second.
Yeah, you could physically line a linebacking core up there, but they're missing at least 2 legitimate starters.
Right.
And
one being a true middle linebacker.
Yeah, specifically a true 3-4 middle or a 4-3 middle linebacker. The secondary could line up and play if they had to, and I agree it's a huge need. And I've been talking about drafting Okudah from Ohio State. I get it, but in terms of oh my God, we don't literally have the bodies. That's linebacker.
It's linebacker.
Yeah. That's my biggest concern is the linebacker spot. You guys already said it. It's the only thing that you can really count on right now is Cole Holcomb.
Yeah.
And it's more so with him, you're going to figure out where does he fit best for the coordinator. You're figuring out where does he fit best on your defense. But after that, you're going to have to fill out the rest of the positions, and you have to have depth. I don't think in a 4-3, even in a 3-4, the only thing that you're rotating is your pass rushers. But inside linebacker in a 3-4, you're not really you don't really want to rotate, in my opinion. And then same thing with the 4-3. But when you have the 4-3 set up the way it is, you really want to make sure that those starting backers are solidified. And like we said, it's not there yet, but you want to make sure that those guys are solid because anybody behind them, it's not necessarily a good thing that you're rotating at the linebacker position for me. And Sean Dion, I'm not too confident in him, and I'm not too confident in anybody else on this roster.
I like Dion's depth, at least.
Well, what you guys are
Oh
saying.
yeah, I'm sorry. I do agree, Alex. I like him as depth. It's just the fact that the rotating factor. That's you want your best players on the field at all times. At 4-3, at the linebacker position, I would prefer that we have a solidified starting group, so we don't have to even worry about the fact that the backups are getting time.
This is why I've been so down on Chase Young. It's not that I'm being a bit of a contrarian about it, but it's not that I doubt this man's talent, but they have real holes in. While I would certainly like to improve on Ryan Kerrigan, they just spent a first-round draft pick on an edge rusher last year. You know,
Right.
and meanwhile, they've got massive gaping holes. We haven't even gone to the offensive line. They literally don't have an offensive line right now signed up.
Yeah.
They have. We'll get to that in a minute. I mean, you know, they don't have a linebacking core at all. They desperately need somebody opposite Quentin Dunbar in the worst way, and they're missing a starting free safety, and yet you want to draft an edge rusher. I mean, I get
Right.
it. He's wonderful, you know, but I mean, these are really serious problems we're talking about, and if you can't solve it in free agency. And we just went over the linebackers with you, just in kind of, you know, unless you think Danny Trevathan is it. I mean,
Well,
you know, or John Bostic is the future.
I mean,
Hold on, wait. They signed Shabazz.
no.
No,
He's
no,
saying
I'm
those
just
are
reading
free
off
agents.
names. Yeah, I'm just reading off names.
Oh, I was about to say. Hold
Now,
on.
here's what I would say to respond to that. So, we don't know what kind of philosophy this team's going to have with its linebackers. Are we going to play a lot more Tampa 2? So, because we don't have any linebackers, we don't really know what the philosophy is for, like, what are the roles of the weak side guy, the strong side guy in this team? You know,
Right.
Are we focusing these guys on run stopping, on playing more pass coverage? Like, there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to this linebacking core.
The coaches know this, though. The coaches, we don't
No,
know.
no, the coaches should
have
know.
a philosophy, presumably. Yeah.
They're going to be starting to identify, because there's a lot of free agent linebackers this year. I was just like scanning through a list, and there's like 30 or 40
Yeah, there is.
that have at least been starters, maybe not great, but decent starters from time to time. So I think you can cobble together a linebacking core in free agency. It's not long term. It's just for 2 years maybe or next year, and then you start rebuilding it. But I think that's where they're going to have to start.
I guess that's why I'm so high on Isaiah Simmons all of a sudden. You know, I mean, is there defensively, you know, either the corner or the linebacker, that's where the need is, and these guys are rated at the top of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seems like it's a marriage made in heaven to me. Okay, draft, trade down a couple spots or whatever if you have to, but that's, I think, would be the perfect marriage of elite player and guy that could be plugged in and fill a hole and be a 10-year starter all at the same time. You know?
Here's the one thing that we tend to forget when it comes to offseason, you know, because we look straight to the draft. But, you know, we don't know how things are going to play out because once we figure out who's going to be free agents, we'll be able to understand who are going to be realistic targets for the Skins. It's not always going to be star player here and there, but you'll probably get a decent name, and then you'll probably get a few positions that's going to battle it out for. I mean, a few players that's going to battle it out at camp at select positions. It'll help you when you go to the draft, and I think the bind that we're in when we talk about Chase Young and Isaiah Simmons is that specific factor right there. Is that we don't know what this free agency is going to look like. Because I don't disagree with Steve at all. I don't have a problem with them selecting Isaiah Simmons. And I don't have a problem with them selecting Chase Young either. Like, you're in a position where you could do either or, and you can still come out on top. But the free agency part is going to play a big deal. Like, you'll know how much you got to work with when the draft comes after you finish the first phase of free agency.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I suppose the right philosophy ought to be fill your holes with free agency so you truly can then in the draft just pick the best players.
I mean, that's a classic GM philosophy. It's proven to work.
But the idea that that's actually going to happen with this Redskins team seems far-fetched considering the enormous number of needs that they have.
That's the exact situation. That's the problem that they face is you can't. And it's impossible to fill all your holes in one off season. We know that, but that's literally the issue that they face is like you're gonna fill some holes this off season, but it depends on where, and that can dictate how you move moving forward. And so Steve got a good point. That's
when you're talking about the code red holes on the defense, it's really two linebackers and a corner are what you absolutely would want to grab in free agency if you're saying we don't have these guys right now.
I'd throw free safety in there too.
I mean, I think we at least have a body there. I don't love Monte Nicholson, but he's a body.
He's a knucklehead.
He is a knucklehead, and he'll probably get himself in trouble again because he's done it every year. But
Yeah, I don't have a problem with your assessment, Alex. I think that's right on.
On offense,
Two linebackers
if you want to switch to the offensive side real quick, that's where I think you actually have maybe even more holes, because even though we probably will at least sign one guard from, between Sheriff and Flowers, I think both could come back, but at least one's probably coming back at this point. I agree. But that means you need another guard. You might need a tackle, depending on what happens with Trent Williams, but then it's really... You need 2 tight ends. You need, in my opinion, at least one more starting receiver still.
I mean, I think offensive line is definitely a much bigger problem than receiver. I kind of like the receiver core, to be honest. I don't know if I would spend a ton of draft capital on receivers.
I'm saying free agent capital.
I wouldn't turn down A.J. Green, but, I mean, I like the idea of the Kelvin Harmon, the Ohio State guy, help me,
McLaurin,
and then McLaurin and Steven Sims. I think they have a future.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the problem.
Did you just call Terry McLaurin the Ohio State guy?
Yeah,
you're going to have to narrow it down because we have so many Ohio State guys.
I had a brain fart, assuming. But here's the problem. I would like to read to you the current list of tackles that are signed to this team.
Oh dear Lord, why?
Trent Williams, who's
not here,
Lord knows his status is.
Yeah.
Paul Adams, Jerron Christian, Morgan Moses, and Timon Paris.
Right.
That is the sum total of the offensive tackles. I've never, other than the fact that he's on my chart, I don't know anything about Paul Adams. Jerron Christian, we know what we've seen. Is he a starter? Probably not. Morgan Moses has gotten progressively worse. And Timon Paris is a practice squad type guy.
Right.
That's a crisis. That is a bigger
This
crisis.
is the biggest. This is what I would call the biggest problem on the team. If it's not going to work in the trenches, nothing else has really a chance to work. I think the receiver thing, or as Alex modified it to pass catchers in general, that is definitely a need too.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know what the heck we're going to do with an offensive line like
allow
this.
me to read to you now the list of guards and centers. Are you ready?
No, that's okay. No,
It won't take very long.
Because there are none.
Wes Martin, Ross Piersbacher, and Chase Rourier. That is all of the guards and centers we have on this team.
I did think Wes Martin, when he played, looked okay. Like, I think
he was okay.
in
Sure.
another year he might become a starter. Like, if you groom him right. But who knows? Still.
It's an unknown, yeah, still. Who knows?
I mean, but anybody who doesn't think, even more so than linebacker,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is like the dam
the
has
big problem.
burst. Like, the iceberg has hit the Titanic when it comes to the offensive line.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly if Trent does whatever Trent does. I mean, hopefully Ron Rivera's been on the phone with him or somebody.
Right.
Scott Turner, anybody has been on the phone with Trent. Call me. I'll go down
An intern.
to the gym.
Can we get an intern
Houston.
to call him or something?
Call me.
Yeah.
I'll go down and talk to him if you want me to. But
do you guys?
Crisis.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, crisis. Do you think it's easier to address offensive line issues in free agency?
I actually think
perhaps receiver.
If you're looking for starters, no. If you're looking for depth, yes. You can get. And actually, I'll take that back. For some reason, no one values a right tackle. You can always seem to find a starting right tackle every free agency period.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if partially it's that offensive linemen tend to have slightly longer careers, so there might be more of a crop of them, older guys for longer than, say, running backs, which are going to.
The problem is,
I think it's easier for the free agency to fill in free agency than it is any place else, free agency than draft, really, because truth be told, there are certain positions where you have to hope that these players get it in a sense. Sometimes you can develop these rookies that come out, and it can take years for that to happen. Like, they're not going to come out the gates playing like Trent Williams. You can say that for any position, but like when it comes to key positions like up front and quarterback, or those main positions specifically on offense, that's something that you need to know that they're ready to go. And if you don't have a choice, then sure, the draft is, that's where you find them. But if you can get a guy in free agency who's ready to go off reps day one whenever he signs with you all, then it's way easier than taking your chances in the draft. You can you solidify that front pretty quickly by getting a guy like that.
Well, let me read to you, because again, this won't take very long either. The list of free agent left tackles this year.
Oh,
Ready?
God. Okay.
Andrew Whitworth, who's like 190 years old, from the Rams. He's almost my age, for God's sakes. Anthony Costanzo, 32 years old, from the Colts.
Right.
Kelvin Beachum, 30 years old from the Jets. Is that exciting anybody? No. Greg Robinson from Cleveland. I mean,
He had a
he's
couple good
name.
years, I think, didn't he?
He's a name, but what's Cleveland doing? Looking for tackles. Jason Peters, who's 1,000,000 years old with the Eagles.
Right.
DJ Humphries, young guy with the Cardinals, decent prospect. Has been a part of an atrocious group.
Yeah.
In the Cardinals in Arizona. Chris Clark, 34 years old in Houston. No, he's not a starter. So I'm gonna always pronounce this guy's name wrong with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cedric Ogbuhi. Forgive me if that's wrong. Young guy, another team that hadn't had a good offensive line. Dakota Dozier, I don't even know who he is. Cornelius Lucas. That's it. That's all of the undrafted free agents or the unrestricted free agents
Right.
left tackles. That's the entire group. Does that sound like there's a starter?
No,
in that bunch?
I think we don't really appreciate because one, the Redskins have historically been good at finding left tackles in the draft, but even when we lucked our way into a Ty Nsekhe years ago, and here was a guy who probably could have been your starting left tackle for 5 years, and we just stumbled upon him playing arena football or something, that.
It wasn't even that level.
I think he was in the AF2 at that time, the second tier arena league.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
the odds of that again happening are pretty low. Let's be honest.
I mean, we had Ty in the building and they let him walk.
Well, Buffalo offered him a ton of money, or a good ton, not a ton, but
I mean, there are more right tackles available.
right.
But, but again, some of these guys are old. Brian Bulaga,
Mm-hmm.
Is another one. I remember Robbie Duncan on this show saying Brian Bulaga sucks.
He was a
couple
name.
years ago. Yeah, he's a name. Jack Conklin, there's a name with the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
Good prospect maybe. Donald Penn, we know all about Donald. Who knows if he's even going to play again?
Right.
Obviously he was here last year. There's a bunch of names. Andre Smith, who's now with the Ravens last year. There's another one. There's a bunch of names. Whether or not there's any starters in this group, you're talking about a new left tackle, but potentially you're talking about maybe getting rid of Morgan Moses for salary cap reasons.
Right.
We have no guards. I mean, there's just.
They have to re-sign Brandon Sheriff and probably Flowers just to reduce the number of things they need to do.
If they're smart, they will.
Yeah. Yeah, this is tough. The left tackle thing especially, it's tough. It's just you got to hope that if you're going to pick up someone in free agency, you just got to hope that transition would go smoother than a new guy coming up out of college transitioning to the NFL. This is a tough one. I don't know if there's a right answer here. Let's talk about one more group maybe before we move on to our XFL stuff and Super Bowl stuff. So what do you guys think? You want to do receivers? I thought that's kind of an interesting
I think
conversation.
Yeah,
okay.
as I termed it, pass catchers, just because.
Pass catchers, I like that. Let me ask you, because I was out last week, did the Air Coryell conversation affect any of our thinking about receivers or what sort of tactic we should take with getting receivers?
It doesn't affect my. I mean, if you don't know, Norv Turner loved tight ends. I don't know if his son is going to be the same way. And H-backs and, guys who come from, the inside going out, that's a big thing for them. So, you do have to kind of pay attention to that. I just don't remember. I can't think far enough back if they ever really cared about slot receivers back when Turner was here. Or if that didn't really exist back then,
sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
who knows?
existed. It always
But you know what I
existed.
mean.
Yeah.
It wasn't emphasized.
The big name in the pass-catching world is A.J. Green.
Right.
And then right as of now, Amari Cooper is going to be a free agent. Also Dallas hadn't signed him.
Right, and they're going to give all their money to Dak Prescott.
Yeah, A.J. is 32 years old. That's something to keep in mind. And receivers, don't age gracefully. In the NFL, Devin Funchess is a name who has some talent, who's had some problems. Didn't he get into drug problems? Am I right about that?
I don't remember that. Don't
hold me to that. So there's a few names, on here that are possible. Would you pay A.J. Green huge money, knowing he's 32 years old?
Maybe not a long-term deal. Would you give him decent money, but for only 2 years? Maybe. Sure.
If I was a Super Bowl contender, I would definitely do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the right team to bring in a player like that.
See, I do think, and Steve, I know you love the young receivers we have, but I do think there's a we need to find a veteran who can kind of mentor them role as much as we need another receiver. Because I don't know. Paul Richardson has never done anything for us, and on the field, definitely not. Don't know about off the field. He's never really, stood out as like a great leader. You never hear about him like, taking guys under his wing.
I think
Right.
the Redskins just need to call Jamal. Frankly,
Yeah.
Look, I train 4 days out of the week
know
now.
you do.
You know what I'm saying? If you guys trying to pay me a minimum salary of at least $600K, I'll take it. I'll take a couple hits to the head.
There you go. Would you be willing to tie your legacy to this team, though, Jamal? That's the real question.
Oh, of course. It just so happens to be the team that I loved growing up, and I root for.
There you
wish
go.
them well. I could play for them.
He's got that
sacrifice
loyalty.
Some blood, sweat, and tears on the field, literally. So, yeah. If y'all
Amen.
listening, you know what I'm saying, make the call. Get me in there.
Yeah, we got a candidate right here. I like that. I don't know. I think a big name receiver to complement McLaurin would go a long way. But as always, like you guys are saying, it comes down to money, to cost. 2-year deal on someone like that, Alex. I kind of like that. I kind
don't
of
know
like
why
that
he
idea.
would take a 2-year deal. I mean, he's AJ Green.
Well, because he's.
Yeah, that he might be slightly too big of a name for
Right.
that, but I think that's the right track
No,
to be on.
I think there are some guys who are like 33, 34 who are not him, but who you could get for that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And look,
there are.
look for guys who are good locker room types, guys who can say, "Hey, stop goofing around and focus on your route tree." Things like that.
And in terms of tight ends, there are a few tight ends out there. Eric Ebron's
Right.
one. He's only 27 years old. Hunter Henry. Heard some rumors that Hunter Henry isn't even going to make it to the market.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a
wouldn't be
thin tight end
surprised.
market, both free agent and draft. We've talked about that.
Yeah, it is. It is a thin, free agent market. Tyler Eifert would be one, with the Bengals. So there's a few guys out there. They probably need to bring somebody in and draft somebody both because the tight end group is just so barren.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
almost no talent at all in it. Vernon Davis, would they bring him back for another year? I mean, he's been in DC a long time.
And
now.
they love him, when he's out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably a better move than taking a huge risk on someone who's, may not have any chance of working out anyway.
If he's not looking for, a big payday, I would and he still wants to play, I'd absolutely consider it.
Because tight end is make
Yeah, it
no
makes more
mistake,
sense to do
tight
that.
end is maybe not as visible a position, but it's still a crisis.
Yeah.
They don't have a starter.
No.
Jeremy Sprinkle isn't a starter.
Right.
He could physically start, but he's not a starting quality player. So they need serious help at tight end as well.
Yeah.
And, there's a few names on here, but whether they can get one, another story.
Yeah, and again, this is a draft where I don't think you'll find a tight end. There are a couple who you hear rumored around the first round. They're not top tier talents. These are back of the first round types at best.
I'm kind of rooting for one of those Shrine Bowl guys, just so we
Like
know
Wilcox
that,
or-
Clint,
yeah.
Clint didn't waste his time
Yeah.
going down there to.
Okay, let's move on from that. Position groups then. We will obviously be doing this way more as the offseason goes on to talk about this in so much more detail. But for now,
we have nothing
let's
but
talk
time.
about... Yeah, we got nothing but... Yeah, we're made of time right now. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the XFL stuff. Alex, I hear there's some familiar names on some of these teams.
So, because they released their rosters for all 8 XFL teams, I went and found, a quick list of the ex-Redskins who are in the XFL this year. 7 of the 8 teams have a former Redskin, 24 total players, so an entire roster's worth of former failed Redskins.
John Beck.
Gotta love it.
No John, but that we actually have 2 quarterbacks on here, and one is a name we all know well, and that's Josh Johnson.
Josh Johnson. Hey, I like Josh Johnson as a person.
he was a
Good
nice
for him.
guy who, won a game that time when he was, once 30 years.
That was the highlight of his career.
That was.
I'm not laughing at him. I mean, look, he made it to the NFL. He played, nice guy.
Yeah.
I was rooting for him.
Yeah. Granted,
Hell yeah.
they
No, me
could
too.
only run read option plays and like a dump off screen pass, and that was the entire offense by the time he was in there. It was a mess. But
Don't burst my positive memories.
okay. I'm not going to go through all 24 names because you guys aren't going to remember Trey McBride. Well, some of you might.
I remember
Accurate.
Trey McBride. I have like
Yeah.
I have like 30 old roster charts saved on my computer.
DeMornay
remember?
Pearson L. Do you remember DeMornay Pearson L? There's a name that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do remember.
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So, but generally speaking, all right. So here's the big ones: Josh Johnson, like we said, Nick Novak.
The better one is if you can stump me on a name.
I'll start going through it and we'll see.
All right.
But Nick Novak, we all remember him, kicker. Did he start for 2 years or something like that? It was a while. I feel like he had a good
was
run
here
here.
a little bit.
Of course, everyone's favorite running back, Matt Jones. He will be playing for the St. Louis Battlehawks.
Wow, Matt
Fumbling
Jones.
for the St. Louis
Yes,
Battlehawks.
yeah. As will Mac Brown, running back from Tampa Bay. E.J. Bibbs is playing tight end for the New York team. Same with defensive tackle Joey Mabou. He'll be over there. You remember Joey? And so there's 2 guys in D.C., and they'll probably both be the starting wide receivers. Simi Cobbs, who I think was here last year, right? Good big receiver. And then a fan favorite, we're going back a little ways, the Rocket Rashard Ross. He'll be probably the X or the which one's the speed? It's the X, right? Speed receiver.
Well, no, the X is kind of the bigger,
Okay,
guy,
all right. So he'll be the
probably
Y.
Z.
He'll probably be
Yeah.
their wide receiver, getting deep balls from Cardell Jones. So those are some of your big names. Let's see if I can find one to stump Steve, though, just before. Okay, here
Gotta
we
say,
go.
It's nice to hear these guys kicking around. Still, though.
Salisi Unhaf.
You got to at least pronounce the name right. You can't just mumble something out.
So it might be time to move on after that one.
Uhatafe.
Can you use it in a
Hold on,
sentence?
wait, say that in
Uhatafe. Atafe. Let's say Atafi.
And what's his first name?
Salisi.
You might have got me on that one. I don't remember. Him.
Yes, offensive tackle or offensive lineman. They have him, not as a tackle.
Are you sure he was an ex-Redskin?
He was on the list of ex-Redskins.
Okay.
He probably had like 2 cups of coffee.
Yeah, he might have been one of those guys that
Came in for a week.
and was gone.
Yeah.
And he never made my chart because he wasn't here long enough for me to update it.
Right. So that's a tough one right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
if you're a
good
hardcore guy,
job on
you
stumping
could
him.
look at this list and be like, "Oh, I remember Terrence Garvin."
There's nobody who knows these guys more than I do because of my chart.
Right.
And that's one that there are a handful of them that came and went so fast that I didn't even have a chance to update the chart with
Right,
their name.
right.
until
And
so
I mean, I think we're all those kind of fans. Even though Steve probably, because he writes them all down, is even weirder. But we all remember those deep roster. That's why this show exists. Is for people who love deep roster, moves from time to time.
I don't write them down. I mean, Alex, I've got that.
I know, you have
none of you have
spreadsheets.
ever seen my. I have an enormous spreadsheet.
Right.
It goes into double digits.
Yes. It's insane,
in terms of columns
'cause you're a
and stuff.
crazy
Yeah,
person.
It's really big. Yeah, it's really big.
But so anyway,
All right, well, let's,
XFL, a lot of ex-Redskins. I don't think that's a good thing.
Gotta love it.
Season
you gotta
starts
love
next
it.
Saturday. I'm actually pretty interested because it starts right after the Super Bowl, so at least I get to keep watching football for the most part.
I will be there.
So it's going to be interesting.
I will be
Alex,
there.
tell me
Oh, yeah,
who
I
my
forgot
team
this
is
at
again.
home.
Seattle.
What's my team? Seattle. Okay, I got it.
They're playing
Seattle.
DC in week 1.
Oh, they
Yes.
are. Oh, good. So I can root against the DC and something else. That makes me happy.
Strange person, you really are, Steve.
Yeah.
Let's spend a couple minutes here talking about the Super Bowl because this is huge. We got to get our predictions down. So, a couple minutes left. We got Kansas City. We got San Fran. I guess we should do predictions at the end. So let's just talk a little bit about what we expect to happen.
Can I say screw Kyle Shanahan right up front?
Sure,
Yeah.
maybe that's a great place to
Yeah.
start. Build that out a little
let
bit,
let
Steve.
the audience know how biased you are.
I never said I wasn't biased. I am biased. I don't like Kyle Shanahan. I think he's kind of a tool and he's kind of a jerk. That having been said, all bias removed, I think this is a very, very good matchup.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
really
it's
is
gonna be a good
because I
game.
think Kansas City has by far the more explosive offense,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. That's not news. They've got the best quarterback. I kind of think you could plug in any decent quarterback into the 49ers and do okay. You could play like Kirk Cousins in there
Right.
and be okay. You could
Yeah.
probably plug in Case Keenum and do all right. Kansas City has so many weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Just an unbelievable number of offensive weapons. Whereas the 49ers tend, if the running game goes sideways on them, they have a problem. And so, right off the bat, I think you sort of have to me, you have to give a little bit of advantage to the Kansas City Chiefs just because they have a lot more options to generate points than do the 49ers.
It's a good take.
I'm going to counter that a little.
take.
I agree with you. Kansas is a better offense, but the 49ers defense is pretty darn impressive too.
It is.
And
Yep.
I mean, we've seen it before when a great offense hitting a good defense. We saw it when the Titans played the Ravens. Ravens, everyone thought was going to be an unstoppable offense, and they can get stopped if you get a good defensive scheme and good players. Like, I will be very interested to see how Kansas City's able to kind of counter that front four, that pass rush that's going to be coming at them.
Well, I mean, fun fact. The Kansas City Chiefs actually gave up fewer points than did the 49ers
Really?
this year. Yep. The Kansas City gave up 308 points. The 49ers gave up 310 points.
Oh,
Well, you
wow.
know,
Wow.
a lot of those. You're right. A lot of those. It doesn't even matter. But I was going to point to the two big games with the Niners and the Saints when they. The Niners. Like back-to-back weeks when they played the Saints and another team, where they gave up 40 against the Saints. Those two anomalies of a game. But overall, you know who the better defense is. As in the football
Right.
fans, we know who the better defense is.
49ers have the better defense.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Sean.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that. I think the combination of the 49ers having the better defense and having the better running game that can maybe control the clock a little bit, win time of possession, get really long drives, that could be really hard for the 49ers to get past. Because I think Steve's right that they're the flashier team, but they're, I think, a little bit less dependable. And the combination of the things that the 49ers bring to the table, I think it's going to be a real tough game for San Fran. But this is kind of the year for weird results, so it's going to be a good game either way.
It reminds me a lot of, and I was not around obviously, but I always remember hearing people say in the 60s when you watch the NFC versus the AFC, right after the merger and right before the merger, it was the NFC or the NFL, I guess at that point, was an overwhelmingly strong, power-based football game. And what they were doing in the AFC or AFL was a lot of, spread and speed to kind of, because they couldn't get the strong guys. And this kind of reminds me of that.
What you're talking about, the analogy really goes back to the Dan Fouts era San Diego Chargers.
Right, sure.
In particular is what you're talking about. Fouts and Kellen Winslow and a couple other guys, Joyner was on that team. Those guys is what Alex is talking about.
Right.
They went downfield. They were high-powered. They just had no defense.
Right.
That's why they never won anything.
But even you look at the Jets with Namath, they were supposedly going to be, this high-powered, shotgun-heavy offense back then.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a good game either way. I just think I think probably I'm going to go with the Chiefs. This is not my official prediction, but I just think the Chiefs probably have the upper hand just because of Patrick Mahomes is so dynamic and they have so many weapons and they can hurt you so many different ways. They're kind of on a roll. I get it, believe me, about the 49ers defense, but the Chiefs defense is no slouch either. They're good too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially that guy, oh my God, what's this guy's name? Starts with an S. He's their safety. Sorensen, maybe? Sorensen? Does that sound right? He's been coming alive in the playoffs for Kansas City and playing really well. So you're right, Steve. They have some stuff to go on defense, too. It's just, I think, overall, their whole season, San Fran's got the edge on this one. Why don't we do official predictions? Steve, you said you weren't ready to give yours, so you have to go first.
Okay.
What's your official
All
prediction?
right. I'm going to say the Chiefs win this game, get their first Super Bowl ever, I believe, right? Did they win Super Bowl 2 or 3 or whatever it was? It's been that long.
Yeah.
Not sure.
They haven't
Yeah,
been
I'm
in a
gonna
Super Bowl
say-
for a long time.
Since the beginning.
Yeah.
It's been since the early days. Yeah, I couldn't remember. They were in like the second or third Super Bowl. I can't remember if they
Well,
won
they were
it
in
or
the
not.
first one, too. Yeah.
All that's before any of us were alive.
Right.
But prediction. So I'm going to say close game, good game, 28-24 Chiefs.
Awesome. Alex, you got one? No, Jamal, go for it.
Yeah, I'll go, and I don't necessarily shoot. I'll give a score because I don't know. I think it's gonna be close, but I would say I think the Niners end up pulling it off. 27-24. I would say I really am rooting for Andy Reid, but the only thing I can't get past is it's not off the strength of like the offense for the Chiefs is elite. Like, there's no way around it. But when you look at the front four for the Niners, and you look at their offensive line too, and their ability to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, it's just very hard for me to go against that. No matter who you have a quarterback, if they can dominate your offensive line like that, or your defensive line, it's just hard for me to go against that. And I think that if you can control the game in that aspect, then you can pretty much win any game, or you can get you're in any game at the very least. And I think that the Niners will be able to win it.
All right, so I mean, I'm rooting for Andy Reid, maybe not the rest of the Kansas City Chiefs, and you know, because I've always kind of had a soft spot for Andy Reid, just like he's always had a soft spot for a dozen donuts.
Andy Reid has a lot of soft spots, himself.
Steve, control yourself.
Because he's fat.
But when it comes down to it, I always kind of err back to speed versus power. I'm going to take the powerful team, or the strength team each time. And to me, you know, the 49ers are just a more physical team. So that's how I kind of go. And it's going to be lower scoring than I'm thinking like 21-17 type thing.
Okay. This one's tough. I kind of like you guys going more on the average to lower side of scoring, but then I'm looking at what the 49ers have put up this season and what Kansas City have put up this season, and these teams score a lot for being teams with good defenses. They put up a lot of points. So I'm going to say this one is going to be 30-24 San Fran. I think San Fran is able to do basically what I just described earlier. Run the clock out, hold on to the ball. Kansas City scores when they get it, but they don't get it enough, and San Fran holds on by a score.
Can I throw
That's my
one more
prediction.
thing out here?
Of course.
Now, the halftime show this year is Jennifer Lopez and Shakira.
Oh, my God.
You know,
Let's
am
talk
I
about
wrong
that.
in thinking that the NFL made a very big deal about bringing in Jay-Z to tart up the halftime show and make it something special? And so the best he could do is Shakira?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, Jennifer Lopez is the
hip-hop.
bigger of the two, but sure.
Okay, but, when has she had a last hit,
Yeah, I know.
song? Forever, right?
been a
I'm
long
no, modern music hip-hop fan necessarily, but, I just think Jay-Z could do a lot better than that. And I'm bitterly disappointed that all the hype with his contract with the NFL and the best he could do is those two. So I'm bitterly disappointed. They could have done that without him, without Jay-Z.
Yeah, I think this is we talk about this every year. This is always the NFL's attempt to put in the halftime show. Someone's going to open up the fandom to other people. So it's always, it's usually a diva. It's usually a pop star of some sort. I agree. I think Steve probably, maybe it's a family friendly thing. He's not as family friendly perhaps in his lyrics as they are, not calling them family friendly, by the way.
To perform, but he knows a lot of people. Couldn't he get somebody who's more hip and kind of modern? But to me,
it does seem weird. It seems
a
weird.
bit weird. To me, there is no halftime show until Metallica does a halftime show.
Well,
okay? That has to happen.
But you are a rocker, or and heavy. You like heavy metal. You like rock. You like that kind of stuff. So the problem with the halftime show is the rule seems to be find me somebody who was relevant 20 years ago and isn't dead. That seems to be where the gear. Didn't Britney Spears do it way after she was washed up? And well,
Britney Spears did it originally when Aerosmith played, and they had Aerosmith and Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake
that was
playing "Walk This Way" back 20 years ago.
That was
when she was not a mess.
Right, but okay, so she was not a mess then, but still, Aerosmith was past their heyday. That's the problem. They always want somebody who appeals to old people because they like to if you're 50, it's whoever was popular for you.
Of course, they had the problem of Justin Timberlake ripping a woman's shirt off, on live national television.
That was a wardrobe malfunction, Steve. You can't judge him for that.
What's the interesting point is I saw Janet Jackson in the mall the day before that happened.
And she was just walking around topless. It was very odd.
She was topless. She was in the the fancy purse place.
I don't know.
I can't remember. Louis Vuitton. She was in the
Louis
Louis
Vuitton,
Vuitton
yeah.
store. Yeah, in the Galleria Mall in Houston when that happened.
Well,
Yeah,
My point is,
I think.
am I wrong? I mean, there's a ton of
No, you're not wrong.
of new artists. Even in I'm fine with having hip hop,
Right.
halftime show. Just mix it up. I'm fine with all that. Couldn't he get like DJ Khaled or somebody and line up a bunch of modern stars who people would like
Now,
instead of like
then
Jennifer Lopez?
Then you alienate your older fans. See, I think Alex actually hit the nail
to
on the
make it
head.
up.
It's
Mix it up.
Well, I think this is what he's saying, though, and I think this is probably what they do is we need someone with name recognition. Everyone knows right away, but who's also been around for a while so that the older fans aren't like, who the hell is this?
Everybody, though. Give me Metallica 1 year and then give the young people DJ Khaled another year, I mean, what's
Just
wrong with having a mix of people,
get
for God's sakes?
a man with a friggin' rocket pack again. That's what I've always said. Go back to the original Super Bowl.
rocket
They
pack?
had a man shoot himself across the field on a rocket pack.
Yeah, and see, that's so much better than the last 10 halftime shows
They've
we've
been
had. I
terrible.
would
Like the
easily
last
do
several halftime shows have been
Yeah,
abominations.
they all blurred. I mean, I turn them off half the time now.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Okay.
kind of agree. I think the last thing that I remember was the Beyonce
Right.
one.
When the power went out.
And
My favorite
yeah.
halftime
I
show.
don't think the power one.
Oh, no, it went out after.
I don't know.
Right after she was done.
Yeah, no, her
I
show.
remember
God. My favorite all-time halftime show is and will always be U2 because that was the 9/11 year, and what they did was really special. That will always be my number one halftime show. But then you got to go Prince. After that, he was great.
Yeah, I do remember
Yeah.
Prince.
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney, I thought was boring.
Yeah,
I loved,
he's a boring music compared to today's music.
I
That's
love
the
Tom
thing, isn't it?
Petty. I thought Tom Petty did great. But I think the two that
Now
stick
that's
out
boring.
for me, I love Tom. I'm a huge Tom Petty fan. Just humor me. But U2 and Prince blew those were the 5-star performances. I thought.
Yeah. I mean, there have been some good
Fair
ones.
enough.
I mean, it's just they seem to they don't know what direction they want to go. They never do.
All my point is I expected more. You hired Jay-Z to do this, and he came up with Shakira and Jennifer Lopez.
We're going to have to give this a chance. So I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying a lot of people feel this way, and I think maybe they're the underdog for a reason, and they'll put up a hell of a show and impress us all. So I think I'll before I say anything negative, I'm gonna wait to see them live before I confirm what I think.
I may have to
Fair
just
enough.
turn it to the puppy.
Yeah,
bowl
that's what
instead of watching
I've done
the
that.
halftime show.
I'm really gonna give it. I'm really gonna look. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna give it like 10 minutes before I say, you know what, I'll be back.
God knows that it can be anything's better than Maroon 5 last year.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely
that was
turned
terrible.
that off.
That was terrible.
The one thing I'll say, and we'll close out, but there's something they did during the Olympics in London where they got the director from Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels to direct the opening game ceremonies, and he came out with some.
Who?
Do you remember the movie Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels? Madonna's husband. I don't remember. Guy Ritchie. That's who it is.
No, I have no idea.
So
what
they
you're
got
talking
this a
about.
famous director to produce the entire thing, and it was like nuts and out there, and they had like 20-foot tall gear walls and all this crazy. That's what you need to do. Stop focusing on the musician. Find a good producer director to figure out something just blow your mind crazy to do there. You
Get J.J. Abrams to
Yeah.
do it. He knows how to produce mindless light shows that nobody cares
exactly, and the people will be drunk. It'll be great.
about. J.J. Abrams, Jay-Z production.
There you go.
Jesus. Now I would watch that.
I could not think of two more different people.
Yeah, well done. We will leave it there then, I guess. We got plenty more Hogsty content coming at you as the offseason continues. Super Bowl week, so keep checking back hogsty.com for the latest and greatest, and we will see you all right here on the show next week. Take care. Cut.
Hey, I'm Zach,
And I'm Kevin.
and we're the hosts of the Rinkside Podcast.
We were annoyed by the lack of hockey coverage on local sports radio and decided that we were stupid enough to try and provide some ourselves.
We have what we call the Rinkside Guarantee. We guarantee that the podcast you're currently listening to is better than ours. We are literally just two halves of one whole idiot trying to fumble through covering the Detroit Red Wings, the National Hockey League, and hockey in general.
Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Ringside Pod, and subscribe to us on all your favorite podcast providers.
Every time you listen to our podcast, it brings us one step closer to our ultimate business goal of purchasing the Arizona Coyotes and then moving them to Detroit. What? Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming, or just another commercial. We aren't the ones who make those choices.